Vaelora, a city where the boundaries between magic and machine not only blurred but danced in a harmonious symphony. Skyscrapers of glass and steel stretched towards the sky, their foundations rooted in ancient stone inscribed with runes of power. Above, markets floated on platforms adorned with glowing orbs and banners fluttering in a gentle, artificially conjured breeze. The streets below buzzed with the hum of magical energy and the clatter of automated carriages, their paths lit by lamps infused with everlasting luminescence. In the heart of this metropolis stood the Technomancer's Guild, a majestic building of dark obsidian and bright copper, etched with circuits that pulsed with soft blue light. It was here that Kale spent his days, nestled among gadgets and grimoires, his life a testament to the city's creed of innovation. Kale, with his sharp eyes and quick fingers, was a technomancer of no small skill, though not yet of great renown. His workspace was a clutter of half-assembled devices and ancient tomes, a reflection of his dual affinities. Today, he was absorbed in his latest project, a device designed to enhance the conductivity of magical energies through technological means. The contraption lay in pieces, as though it had surrendered to his insistent tinkering. As he adjusted a delicate coil, his mind wandered to the evening ahead. The Royal Archive was unveiling a new exhibit, a collection of artifacts recently unearthed from the ruins beyond the storm barriers. Kale had been looking forward to this event, not just for the display of magical heritage, but for the opportunity it might present to finally gain the recognition he craved. Another adjustment here, maybe, Kale muttered to himself, twisting a fine wire with a pair of tweezers. If I could just get the flux modulator to stabilize. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime from his communicator, a sleek device wrapped around his wrist. A message from his colleague, Mira, appeared in glowing letters. Don't forget tonight. The Archive Gala! You promised you'd join us. Kale smiled slightly, typing back a quick confirmation. He glanced around his chaotic table, his gaze catching on a small, framed photograph of his family, his parents, both renowned traditional mages, and his younger sister, now studying at the Mage Academy. They seldom understood his passion for technomancy, the art they regarded as too mechanical, too detached from the true essence of magic. Yet, tonight could be different. If his invention worked, if he could demonstrate it effectively, perhaps he could bridge that gap in understanding. Perhaps he could prove that technology could carry magic, not just as a vessel, but as a partner. As the afternoon waned into evening, Kale prepared for the event. He dressed in a crisp suit, the fabric enchanted to resist wrinkles and stains, a minor but practical spell. He packed up his device carefully, securing it in a case lined with protective runes. Arriving at the Royal Archive, Kale was struck anew by the grandeur of Vaelora. The building was a marvel, its walls lined with tapestries depicting the city's storied past, illuminated by enchanted flames that flickered in sconces without burning anything. The air was filled with the murmur of excited voices and the faint, ever-present scent of ozone and old paper. As he moved through the crowd, Kale felt a mixture of anticipation and nervous energy. The artifacts were displayed with reverence, each piece surrounded by barriers of subtle magic to deter overly curious hands. He paused before a display, his eyes drawn to an ancient staff said to control the weather. Its wood was dark and smooth, etched with symbols that seemed to pulse with dormant power. Imagine what could be learned from such a piece, Kale thought, his mind racing with possibilities. Could the integration of such ancient magic with modern technology protect the city further, enhance their control over the weather that battered their barriers? Lost in thought, Kale scarcely noticed the crowd parting for the arrival of the city's dignitaries. His heart quickened as he realized that the night held more possibilities than he had imagined. Here, among the whispers of the past and the murmur of the elite, Kale might just find the key to unlocking not only the city's potential but his own. The gala at the Royal Archive was in full swing, a kaleidoscope of colors and sounds. Ornate robes and glittering gowns swirled through the grand hall, each attendee a testament to Vaelora's blend of high society and high sorcery. Kale navigated through the throng, his device secured under his arm, his senses tingling not from the cold, but from a bubbling anticipation mixed with a dash of apprehension. As he approached the central exhibit, a glass case containing the newly discovered staff, his heart thrummed in his chest. The staff, rumored to be an ancient artifact capable of bending the weather to its wielder's will, was more magnificent up close. Intricate glyphs spiraled around its length, glowing faintly in the dim light, whispering secrets of a bygone era. Such power! Kale whispered under his breath, his mind ablaze with the possibilities such an artifact could unlock. Could this be the key to my acceptance? He pondered, a flicker of hope igniting within him. Just as he reached out to trace the glass encasing the staff, a sharp, piercing alarm cut through the chatter and music of the gala. Instantly, the room plunged into chaos. The lights flickered and dimmed, casting eerie shadows across the panicked faces of the attendees. Kale's heart raced as he spun around, trying to discern the source of the disturbance. In the confusion, a shadowy figure dashed toward the artifact, their movements both graceful and precise. Before anyone could react, the figure had smashed the glass case with a small, concentrated burst of energy, and seized the staff. The room's temperature dropped suddenly, a chill wind swirling through the open doors, carrying with it the promise of impending doom. Kale, driven by a mix of duty and curiosity, pushed through the crowd, his eyes fixed on the retreating silhouette of the thief. As he ran, the building began to shudder, the very foundations groaning as if in pain. Outside, the skies, previously clear, now roiled with dark, ominous clouds that churned unnaturally fast. The staff, it must be controlling the weather, Kale realized, his thoughts racing as fast as his feet. But who would dare to unleash such chaos? He burst through the doors just in time to see the figure disappearing into the dark, stormy night. With no time to lose, Kale followed, his own magical energy surging in anticipation of the confrontation to come. The streets of Vaelora transformed before his eyes, the quaint, magical luminescence replaced by the harsh, staccato flashes of lightning. As he pursued the thief, the wind whipped around him, as if trying to hinder his progress. The storm seemed almost sentient, reacting to the presence of the stolen artifact. This is no ordinary tempest, Kale thought, his resolve hardening. This is a warning, a harbinger of what's to come if I fail. With each step, the storm intensified, the winds howling with a ferocity that threatened to sweep him off his feet. Yet Kale pressed on, driven by a newfound determination. This was no longer just about proving himself or gaining recognition. It was about protecting his city, his home. As the thief's figure grew fainter in the distance, obscured by the torrential rain and the darkness, Kale knew he was running out of time. I must catch them, he urged himself, pushing his body to its limits. For Vaelora, for all of us. Behind him, the city lay at the mercy of the unleashed elements, the first test of its resilience under the shadow of the stolen power. Kale's mind raced with strategies and spells, anything that might help him reclaim the artifact and restore order. But as he chased the thief into the heart of the storm, Kale was unaware that the true challenge was only just beginning. Beyond the physical pursuit, a deeper, more complex battle awaited, one that would test his very beliefs about magic and technology, and ultimately, himself. Under the cloak of the raging storm, the chase led Kale through the labyrinthine alleys of Vaelora. His breath came in sharp bursts, visible in the frigid air, mingling with the mist that the rain left in its wake. Each footfall splashed through the puddles, the rhythmic sound punctuated by the occasional clap of thunder that seemed to echo his racing heartbeat. As Kale rounded a corner, the thief was momentarily visible, a silhouette framed against the flickering light of a broken street lamp. The figure moved with an eerie grace, almost blending into the swirling darkness, the stolen staff held securely. Kale's mind spun with questions. Who are they? What drives them to wield such chaos? He wondered, struggling to maintain his focus against the buffeting wind and his own mounting fatigue. Drawing on his technomantic skills, Kale reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a small, intricate device. It was a makeshift tracker he'd been tinkering with, originally intended to monitor atmospheric anomalies. With a quick adjustment, he recalibrated it to hone in on the unique magical signature of the staff. The device beeped softly, its lights blinking in synchronization with the staff's pulsations, now a beacon in the tumultuous night. Meanwhile, the thief seemed to sense the narrowing gap, glancing back with a hooded gaze that flickered with a mix of defiance and urgency. Their eyes met for a fleeting second, a silent acknowledgement of the stakes at play. With renewed vigor, the figure surged forward, delving deeper into the city's ancient quarter, where the buildings stood closer together, their aged stones whispering stories of the old magic. Here, the streets twisted like the roots of an ancient tree, and the modern technology that lit most of Vaelora was sparse, the magical glow faint under the oppressive storm clouds. This part of the city. It's almost as if it's been waiting for something ancient to awaken, Kale mused, his thoughts racing as he navigated the narrow passageways. The chase led them to an open square, surrounded by statues of the city's founders, their faces eroded by time and weather, yet still resolute. In the center stood an old fountain, its basin overflowing with the relentless rain. The thief paused, turning to face Kale fully for the first time. Beneath the hood, a woman's face emerged, her expression taut with resolve and a hint of sorrow. "Why do you unleash such destruction?" Kale called out over the roar of the storm, his voice carrying a mixture of anger and desperation. The woman's voice, when it came, was as sharp as the wind. "Vaelora has lost its way, blinded by its own brilliance. Magic and technology should not be chained together. They must be free to evolve, not constrained and merged into aberrations." Her words cut through the tumult, challenging the very foundation of Kale's beliefs. Kale stepped closer, his own staff in hand, the tip glowing softly with a gentle light that seemed at odds with the chaos around them. "And you would risk everything to prove that? What gives you the right to decide for all?" The woman's gaze did not waver. "What gives anyone the right to stifle what we do not fully understand? I act to save what might be lost." The rain seemed to pause, the storm holding its breath as the ideological divide between them was laid bare. Kale felt a pang of doubt. Was it possible that in his pursuit of recognition, he had overlooked the essence of his heritage? With the staff still in her grip, the woman turned, her cloak billowing as she prepared to flee once more. "Follow me, and perhaps you will see," she shouted back, her figure retreating into the shadowed archway of a towering edifice. Torn between his duty and the unsettling new perspective, Kale hesitated. The storm resumed its assault, the rain pelting down as if urging him to make a choice. With a deep breath, filled with a mix of trepidation and resolve, Kale decided. "I must understand," he whispered to himself, stepping forward into the unknown, following the path the mysterious woman had taken, into the heart of the storm and perhaps, towards a new understanding of magic and technology's true place in Vaelora. Kale plunged deeper into the tempest, his pursuit drawing him into the shadowed archway where the mysterious woman had vanished. The ancient edifice loomed before him, its walls lined with creeping ivy and runes that pulsed with a soft, eerie luminescence. As he stepped through the archway, the clamor of the storm dimmed, as if the building itself absorbed the sound, muffling the outside world. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of damp stone and old magic. The hallway stretched ahead, lined with torches that flickered to life at his approach, casting long, dancing shadows. Kale's footsteps echoed in the empty corridor, a solitary sound in what seemed like an abandoned sanctum. "I must be mad, following a thief into the heart of a storm," Kale thought, his internal voice a mix of dread and curiosity. Yet, with each step, a part of him felt strangely at home, as if the very stones recognized him as kin. Ahead, the faint sound of a door creaking open drew his attention. He quickened his pace, rounding a corner to find a vast chamber illuminated by a single, large crystal suspended from the ceiling. The crystal emitted a soft, pulsing glow, bathing the room in a pale light that seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting rhythmically. There, standing before a large, ancient mural depicting the legendary founders of Vaelora, was the woman. She had shed her cloak, revealing long, silver hair that cascaded down her shoulders, shimmering like the rain outside. The staff was no longer in her hands but stood upright, lodged into a stand that seemed designed for it, as if it had finally come home. "Why have you brought me here?" Cale demanded, his voice echoing slightly in the vast space. The woman turned, her expression solemn. "Because you, more than any, stand at the crossroads of change. You wield the powers of both old and new, yet you understand neither," she replied, her tone both accusing and imploring. Cale felt a surge of defiance. "I understand more than you know. I seek to blend magic and technology, to harmonize them for the betterment of Vaelora." "Harmonize or control?" the woman countered softly. She walked toward the mural, her fingers tracing the lines of the depicted mages casting spells of protection and prosperity. "Our ancestors understood that magic was not just a tool to be used, but a living force to be respected. And now, we chain it with wires and circuits, confine it to gadgets and contraptions." She paused, facing him again. "This staff," she gestured toward the artifact, "was not meant to be controlled. It was meant to guide us, to be a partner in our endeavors." Cale approached the staff, his gaze drawn to its ancient wood and the intricate carvings that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. "And yet you used it to unleash chaos tonight." "Not chaos, but a demonstration," she corrected him. "A reminder of what happens when forces too powerful are bound against their nature." The room fell silent for a moment, the only sound the throbbing pulse of the crystal overhead. Cale pondered her words, his skepticism battling with the budding realization that perhaps there was truth in her perspective. "What do you propose?" Cale asked finally, his voice softer, less certain. The woman smiled faintly, a sad, wistful expression. "A return to balance. To learn from the staff, not command it. To study the old ways and integrate them with the new, not as master and servant, but as equals." Cale looked from the staff to the woman, her eyes alight with a fervent, almost desperate hope. Here in this ancient chamber, surrounded by the echoes of the past, he felt the weight of his choices not just for himself, but for all of Vaelora. "Teach me," he said at last, his voice barely above a whisper, but laden with determination. "Show me the path you see." The woman nodded, stepping forward to join him by the staff. Together they reached out, their hands hovering over the artifact, ready to embark on a journey that might well reshape the destiny of their city. As their fingers touched the wood, the crystal above flared brightly, the light spreading through the room in a wave of warm, welcoming luminescence, signaling the start of a new understanding, a new alliance forged in the heart of a storm. In the sanctified silence of the chamber, where the echoes of ancient magic hummed through the stone, Cale and the woman, whom he learned was named Lyria, began their uneasy alliance. As the luminescent glow from the crystal suffused the room, it cast their shadows against the mural, mingling past with present. "First, you must understand the true nature of this staff," Lyria said, her voice a reverent whisper as they both gazed at the artifact. She reached out, her fingers brushing the carvings with a touch as light as a feather. "It is not merely a conduit of power but a repository of wisdom from ages past." Cale watched intently, his skepticism waning under the weight of the artifact's palpable aura. "How do we access this wisdom?" he asked, his mind racing with the possibilities of what they might uncover. Lyria's smile was tinged with sorrow. "It requires a bond, not of dominance, but of respect and unity. You must connect with it, feel its pulse, its life." She guided his hand to the staff. "Close your eyes. Listen not just with your ears, but with your soul." Cale closed his eyes, his hand trembling slightly as he touched the ancient wood. The storm outside seemed to quiet, the winds howled dimming to a gentle murmur. Gradually, a warmth spread up his arm, filling him with a sense of deep, abiding peace. Images flickered behind his eyelids. Shadows of mages long gone, their faces marked with the same intense focus he felt now. These were the original guardians of Vaelora. Lyria's voice floated to him as if from a great distance. They understood that true strength lies in balance, in the harmony between the natural world and the constructs of civilization. Kale's mind swirled with visions of the past. Great storms quelled with a whisper, bountiful harvests grown with a chant, sicknesses healed with a touch. All achieved not through the domination of magic but through partnership and respect. When he opened his eyes, the room seemed unchanged, yet everything felt different. "I saw them," he breathed, awestruck. "The Guardians, they lived in harmony with their powers. They were part of something greater." Lyria nodded. "And we can be as well. But first, we must address the imbalance your city has wrought." She walked towards the mural, her hand tracing the lines of energy that seemed to pulse beneath the paint. "Vaelora thrives on innovation, but at what cost? Your machines siphon the raw essence of magic, bending it, breaking it to fit into your world of gears and glass." Kale followed her gaze, seeing the city in a new light. "We've been so proud of our progress." His voice trailed off as he considered the consequences of their relentless pursuit of advancement. Lyria turned to face him, her eyes intense. "Pride can blind us to the damage we do, Kale. To restore balance, we must reintegrate the old ways into our new world. Not to regress, but to advance in a way that honors all facets of our existence." Kale felt the weight of her words settle in his chest. "What do you need from me?" he asked, ready to take the first step on this new path. "We start by healing the land that has been wounded by our excesses," Lyria said, moving back to the staff. "Together, we will call upon the old magics, using your technological acumen to amplify, not overpower, the spells we cast." Together, they stood before the staff, hands joined over the ancient wood. Lyria began to chant in a language that Kale did not know, but somehow understood. It was the language of the earth, of the wind and rain, a song of healing and restoration. As the words flowed through them, the staff glowed, its light pulsing stronger with each verse. Outside, the storm began to abate, the fierce winds coming to a gentle breeze, the dark clouds parting to reveal the first stars of the night. Kale felt changed, transformed by the knowledge and power that coursed through him. He realized that this was only the beginning. There was much to learn and even more to mend, but together with Lyria, he felt hopeful for the first time about the future of Vaelora. "Thank you, Lyria," he said, his voice steady and sure, "for showing me there's another way." Lyria smiled, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "Thank you, Kale, for being willing to see it. Together, we will bring Vaelora into a new era, an era of true harmony." As they left the chamber, stepping back into the cool night air, the city of Vaelora awaited them, its myriad lights twinkling in the distance, ready for the dawn of a new day. As Kale and Lyria emerged from the ancient chamber, the city of Vaelora lay before them, quiet in the aftermath of the storm. The early hours of the morning painted the sky a deep indigo, the stars slowly fading as dawn approached. They walked in silence through the deserted streets, the only sound their footsteps on the cobblestone, echoing between the tall, slumbering buildings. Kale felt a profound shift within him, a stirring of something ancient and powerful. The experience in the chamber, touching the staff, had connected him to a lineage of mages whose wisdom transcended the ages. He looked over at Lyria, her silver hair catching the faint light of dawn, and felt a deep gratitude mixed with determination. "We need a plan." Kale finally broke the silence as they approached the Technomancer's Guild. "The city will wake soon, and we must be ready to explain the changes that are coming." Lyria nodded, her gaze sweeping over the skyline. "We begin by addressing the council. They must understand the necessity of what we propose." As they entered the guild, the quiet was unsettling. The usual hum of energy and activity was absent in these early hours. They made their way to the assembly room where the council would meet. Here, amidst the high vaulted ceilings and long wooden tables, Kale had spent countless hours advocating for the integration of technology and magic. Today, he would advocate for something different, a new integration, one that respected both elements equally. Kale and Lyria worked together to prepare their presentation. Using the guild's resources, they created visualizations of Vaelora's ley lines, the currents of magical energy that flowed beneath the city. They mapped out how the city's technological advancements had disrupted these lines, causing imbalances that could explain recent anomalies, including the severe weather. The council must see the effects of their decisions, Lyria explained as they examined the maps. They must understand that our advancements should not come at the expense of the natural order. As the sun rose, painting the room in hues of orange and gold, the council members began to arrive. They took their seats, murmuring among themselves, casting curious glances at the unfamiliar face beside Kale. Kale stood, clearing his throat, the room falling silent. "Thank you for gathering at this early hour," he began, his voice steady but imbued with a new timbre, one that commanded attention. "We stand at a critical juncture in Vaelora's history, where we must choose our path forward with wisdom and foresight." He motioned to Lyria, who stepped forward, her presence commanding despite her gentle demeanor. She spoke eloquently about the balance of magic and technology, weaving her words with a subtle magic that made her voice resonate not just in the air, but in the minds and hearts of all present. As she spoke, the visualizations behind her illustrated her points, showing the disrupted ley lines, the city's energy fluctuations, and theoretical models of how these could be harmonized. The council listened, captivated by the blend of ancient wisdom and modern insight. When Lyria finished, the room was silent, the council members exchanging looks of astonishment and contemplation. Kale took the floor again. "We propose a series of initiatives to realign our city's technological advancements with the natural magic that flows beneath our streets. This includes adjusting our energy sources, redesigning our infrastructure, and implementing a new educational curriculum that teaches both magic and technology as complementary forces." The council's debate was intense and prolonged. Questions flew, concerns were raised, but the shift in the room was palpable. Kale and Lyria addressed each point with patience and precision, their partnership a clear demonstration of the harmony they advocated for. As the meeting concluded, the council agreed to form a committee to explore the proposals further. It was a small victory, but a vital first step. Kale and Lyria exchanged a look of relief and quiet triumph as the council members filed out, their murmurs echoing in the now bright chamber. Outside, the city stirred to life, unaware yet of the changes proposed at dawn. Kale stood by the window, watching the streets fill with people. "We have much work to do," he said, turning to Lyria with a resolute smile. Lyria returned his smile, her eyes bright with the promise of a new era. "Together we will heal Vaelora," she affirmed, her voice as clear as the morning air. "And perhaps, in doing so, we can heal ourselves." As they left the guild to walk among the people they aimed to help, the cityscape bathed in the light of a new day, Kale felt the weight of his new purpose settle around him like a cloak, warm and invigorating. This was the beginning of their journey, one that would not only reshape the city but also redefine the very essence of their world. Morning light spilled across the cobblestones of Vaelora, transforming the city into a canvas of gold and shadow. As Kale and Lyria stepped out from the Technomancer's Guild, the streets hummed with the morning rush, the citizens oblivious to the quiet revolution brewing in the heart of their city. "Look at them, all these people, living atop a tapestry of magic they barely understand," Lyria remarked softly, her gaze sweeping across the bustling market square. Her words were not of judgment but of a deep-seated hope that soon, awareness would awaken in the hearts of these city dwellers. Kale nodded, feeling the pulse of the ley lines beneath the cobblestones, a sensation that was now more pronounced than ever. "We'll bring them into the fold, Lyria. Teach them to respect and harness the energies that flow beneath their feet," he replied, his voice tinged with newfound purpose. Their first task lay in the heart of the market, where the disruption of ley lines was most severe. The pair approached the ancient fountain at the square's center, a relic rumored to have once been a powerful node of natural magic. Now, it lay dormant, the magic sealed away by layers of modern infrastructure. Together, they set their hands upon the worn stone of the fountain, closing their eyes to better sense the choked flows of energy. Kale's mind drifted, guided by Lyria's chants, a soft melody that seemed to seep into the cracks and crevices of the city's foundation. Slowly, the suppressed magic responded, a gentle pulse at first, then stronger, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. As the magic stirred, so too did the air around them. A breeze whipped up, carrying the fresh scent of rain and greenery, an aroma long absent from the city's air. People stopped in their tracks, looking around in wonder as the air filled with the energy of reborn magic. "We are witnessing the awakening of Vaelora," Lyria whispered, her eyes shining with tears of joy as the fountain began to glow, its water stirring with renewed vigor. Kale opened his eyes, watching the transformation take hold. Where once the water had been still, now it danced and sparkled under the morning sun, infused with strands of silver light. It wasn't just the fountain that had been transformed. The entire square seemed brighter, the colors of the market stalls more vivid, the voices of the people imbued with a cheerful lilt. Word of the fountain's awakening spread quickly. Citizens flocked to the square, drawn by the spectacle and the inexplicable joy that seemed to radiate from the sight. Kale and Lyria took this opportunity to speak, not just as leaders, but as fellow citizens, sharing their vision for a city balanced in magic and technology. "We have lived in dissonance for too long," Kale addressed the gathered crowd, his voice clear and resonant. "Today marks the beginning of a new era for Vaelora, one where we embrace our heritage and our progress as one." Lyria joined in, her voice weaving through Kale's, a harmony that mirrored their message. "Look around you, feel the energy. This is the true heart of Vaelora. Let us heal our city together, restore the balance that has been lost." The people listened, captivated by the tangible changes they could feel and see. Skepticism gave way to curiosity, then to tentative support. The council members who had attended the presentation earlier were among the crowd, their expressions thoughtful, their earlier reservations melting away in the face of undeniable proof. In the weeks that followed, Kale and Lyria led the city through a series of transformations. Ley lines were restored throughout Vaelora, each node's activation bringing a small celebration of its own. Schools integrated new curriculums that taught the symbiosis of magic and technology from a young age, ensuring that the next generation would grow up with the wisdom to maintain the balance. As the city healed, so did its people. The air became cleaner, the gardens lusher, and a new sense of community flourished. The changes were not just physical. A cultural renaissance began, inspired by the renewed magic that pulsed through Vaelora's veins. Standing once again in the market square, now teeming with life and magic, Kale looked to Lyria, his heart full. "We did it, didn't we?" he said, almost in disbelief at how much they had achieved. Lyria smiled, her eyes reflecting the vibrant life around them. "We started something beautiful, Kale. Let's promise to guide it well." Together, they watched the children play around the fountain, their laughter and music that resonated with the city's vibrant new soul. Vaelora had been reborn, not just rebuilt, and at its heart was a harmony that resonated deeply with all who walked its ancient yet ever new streets. The market square of Vaelora thrummed with the vibrant pulse of a city reborn. Kale stood at the edge of the fountain, watching children weave through the crowd, their laughter mingling with the music of street performers and the chatter of vendors. The energy was infectious, a stark contrast to the somber tones that had once colored the city's atmosphere. As he observed the scene, Lyria joined him, her presence a calming force. "It's like watching a painting come to life, isn't it?" she remarked, her eyes scanning the tableau of joy and community before them. Kale nodded, his gaze lingering on a group of children playing by the fountain. "They're growing up in a different world," he said thoughtfully. "One where magic isn't just a tale from old books, but a tangible part of their daily lives. Lyria smiled, watching a young girl coax tendrils of water from the fountain, giggling as they danced around her fingers. We've given them a gift, Kale. The gift of harmony between the past and the future. The square was bustling with the energy of change. Nearby, a group of artisans demonstrated the crafting of magical amulets, blending alchemical lore with modern metallurgy. Further along, a troupe of dancers moved rhythmically, their steps guided by both traditional folk music and the pulsing beats of contemporary songs, symbolizing the fusion of old and new. Turning his attention back to Lyria, Kale's expression grew contemplative. Do you ever wonder about the ley lines, about other places where they might be wounded? He asked, the weight of their responsibility never far from his thoughts. Lyria considered this, her gaze drifting towards the horizon. There are undoubtedly other cities, other communities out there, struggling under the yoke of unbalanced energies. Our work could help them, just as it has helped Vaelora. The notion of expanding their influence beyond Vaelora's borders was daunting, yet it sparked a flame of ambition in Kale. Perhaps that's our next step, he mused aloud. To take what we've learned here and share it. Not to impose, but to offer. As the day progressed, the square filled with more people, drawn by the promise of a community gathering. The council had organized this event as a celebration of the city's renewal, and as Kale and Lyria moved through the crowd, they were met with smiles and words of gratitude. Look at this, Lyria said, stopping before a stall where a young woman was teaching children how to blend magical herbs with technology to create small, glowing gardens. This is integration. This is the future. The lessons of the past weeks had not been lost on the city's inhabitants. As Vaelora adapted, its people embraced the changes, finding new ways to merge magic with their daily lives, ensuring that the city's growth was sustainable and inclusive. Later, as the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the square, the community gathered for the lighting of the beacon, a newly erected tower at the square's edge, designed to symbolize Vaelora's resilience and hope. Kale and Lyria stood together, hands linked, as they prepared to light the beacon with a spell that combined their energies. The crowd quieted, their faces turned towards the tower, anticipation hanging in the air. Kale looked at Lyria, nodding slightly, and together, they recited the incantation. A surge of power flowed through them, a blend of magic and technology, and the beacon ignited, its light soaring skyward in a brilliant column of white and blue flames. Cheers erupted from the crowd, the beacon's light reflecting in the eyes of every person present. It was a light of unity, of shared purpose and future possibilities. As the celebration continued into the evening, Kale and Lyria retreated to the edge of the square, their mission for the day complete, but their work far from over. Today, we celebrate, Lyria said, her voice filled with quiet joy. Tomorrow, we plan. Kale agreed, his heart full as he looked over the jubilant square. Today Vaelora shines brightly, he replied. And with each new dawn, it will shine even brighter. Together, they watched the night descend, the beacon a steadfast reminder of their journey, a symbol that in the heart of Vaelora, magic and technology danced together in perfect harmony, lighting the way forward for all. As the festivities wound down, and the last echoes of laughter faded into the night, Kale and Lyria found themselves walking along the ancient cobbled paths that led to the city's outer gardens. The beacon's light cast long shadows behind them, its brilliance a stark contrast against the starlit sky. Kale's thoughts turned inward, the weight of their achievements settling in his mind like the gentle touch of dusk. We've started a movement that's bigger than us, he murmured, watching a leaf drift slowly to the ground. Lyria, walking beside him, nodded thoughtfully. It's a beginning, not an end. The true work, the sustaining of this balance, will be our legacy. Her voice was soft, carrying a hint of the solemnity that their responsibility entailed. They arrived at the gardens, a place where Vaelora's ancient magic was palpable. The air was cooler here, scented with jasmine and wild mint. They paused by a small pond, its surface smooth and reflective like a mirror. In it, the beacon's light was reflected, a flickering star in the watery depths. This pond, Lyria began, gesturing to the calm waters, reminds me of what we strive for. A surface that's calm because its depths are in harmony. Each element knows its place, its strength, and its purpose. Kale considered her words, his gaze fixed on the reflection. And like the water, our city must adapt, flow, find new paths around obstacles. We've given them the tools, shown them the path. Now it's up to them to walk it. Lyria turned to him, her expression serene yet filled with an unspoken question. And us, Kale? What paths will we walk? He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling slightly. We walk the path of guardians, mentors. We keep the balance as Vaelora grows, ensure that no one forgets the lessons of the past even as we embrace the future. They sat in silence for a moment, the tranquility of the garden enveloping them. Kale then spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Do you ever fear that it might all unravel? That the balance we've worked so hard to achieve might tilt once more? Lyria looked at him, her eyes reflecting the stars above. Fear is a natural companion on any journey worth undertaking. But fear also teaches us to be vigilant, to care deeply. And that care will guide us, and those who follow. Their conversation drifted into plans for the future, outreach to other cities, the establishment of learning centers where magic and technology could be studied in tandem, and the strengthening of community forums where citizens could voice their dreams and concerns. As the night deepened, they rose from their seat by the pond, the reflection of the beacon a steady light behind them. Walking back towards the heart of Vaelora, they felt the pulse of the ley lines underfoot, a reminder of this city's vibrant new life. The road ahead will have its challenges, Lyria said as they neared the guild, the beacon casting their shadows before them. But also its wonders, Kale added, his voice firm with resolve. For every night, no matter how dark, is followed by dawn. And so, under the watchful light of the beacon, Kale and Lyria continued their vigil, guardians not just of Vaelora's present but its future. The city slept around them, peaceful and transformed, its dreams cradled in the balance between the ancient power of magic and the brilliant promise of technology. Thank you for sharing a moment of your day with me. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Really helps a lot. If you don't, well, I'll still love you. Thanks for stopping by.